Welcome in to the 48 Minutes Podcast on Believe. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator and newest Miami Heat fan, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. Also joining us is the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael Woldby-Freer, who's a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 254, the Sam Mitchell episode, as Mitchell spent 13 seasons in the NBA as a player and is regarded as one of the most successful players to ever be drafted, 54th overall. Of course, Mitchell not only was an NBA player, but went on to become an NBA coach before beginning his broadcasting career, which he still does today. Now, without further ado, fellas, we got some big news here, especially on the 48 Minutes show, because the Giannis era in Milwaukee is officially over. And that's actually pretty weird for me to even say. But the Greek Freak was officially traded to the Miami Heat, along with Bobby Portis, late Monday night in exchange for Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Kasparis Giannis, and the 13th pick in this year's NBA draft, which became Nate Ahmet out of Tennessee, 2 future first-round picks with 1 in 2031 and 1 in 2033, and a pick swap in 2030, and just for a cherry on top, a second-round pick in 2033. So, Bruce, I'll start with you on this one. Given Giannis is our guy, given how long this has been going on, if whether or not Giannis is going to be traded, what was your initial reaction to the news?
Well, as my Boston Celtics were involved in the trade talks, naturally I was excited about the possibility of him coming to Boston, but Milwaukee definitely took the better offer. I mean, the Miami offer was much better. I mean, Giannis and Portis, 2 experienced guys with, championship, pedigree. Tyler Hero, who is a bucket, and I believe he's a Wisconsin native, so that's kind of a coming home deal for him. Khalil Ware, who I thought was a really nice prospect, 7-foot guy, raw, but, you can't teach that height. Jaime Jaquez Jr. had a really nice season for those guys last year, and Kasparis Giannis, I don't know much about the guy. I mean, I can't even pronounce his name. So,
Me neither.
But, right. But Ahmet looks like a keeper. And look, Boston, I believe, drove up the price for the Heat, by dangling Jaylen Brown. I mean, look, Milwaukee had to, be using that as leverage in the Heat deal. And Miami clearly wanted him more, and they're willing to pay. So, John Horst, you should send a nice bottle of wine to Brad Stevens.
Yeah, especially given the fact he might need that bottle of wine now that he's got the Jaylen Brown headache, of where, where do we stand here with Jaylen Brown moving forward, and am I still well liked here? We'll be curious to get your thoughts. And do you agree with Bruce? Was that the best deal, or given that this is a small market like Milwaukee, should they have taken the chance to add a top 12, easily top 15 player in the league?
No, I think this was the best deal available. It was clear what Milwaukee wanted. They wanted some quality players in return, and they wanted some assets in return. You're talking about one of the all-time great players. You deserve to ask for a high price. Now, in terms of what they're getting back in terms of players, that remains to be seen, because I don't know, Tyler Hero's future there already is a little up in the air just because of what he's going to want when it's his turn to be a free agent at the end of this coming season, so in 2027. Are the Bucks really going to give him the max offer that he almost surely will want out there? So that's another decision the Bucks will have to make. The other thing is, too, guys, all the draft picks that they're getting, the one they got in this year's draft and the ones in the future, they're kind of banking on, by the time it comes around, that the Giannis era of dominance in Miami or wherever is going to come to an end, and Miami's window of success is going to start dropping off. They hope massively drop off and pick up some really quality picks. But, the fact that they're doing it years, 4 or 5 years down the road tells me that, by the time Giannis reaches that age, when all the injuries, all the wear and tear on that body, he's a big guy to begin with. At some point, it's going to break down, and the Bucks are kind of hoping hey, we'll bank on that future as much as we love Giannis. We don't know what's going to happen in 4 years with that body, and maybe Miami will bear the brunt of that breaking down. The other thing I'll tell you this, and we can discuss this. I honestly don't know how much more of a contender in the East Miami is, even after this deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a good question there. I think if you look at the Heat moving forward, they clearly need to add shooting. They don't have much shooting after this trade, giving up Hero, one of their better shooters. Norman Powell is a free agent. I don't expect him to be back given, the money they got tied up in Bam and Giannis and Andrew Wiggins. I just don't see that happening. But just a quick look on the Heat on paper. I mean, this should be one of the better defensive teams in the league next season. Giannis and Bam are an elite defensive duo, almost a twin towers down there. Davion Mitchell is nicknamed Off Night for a reason at the guard spot. He's not much of a point guard from a distributor or scoring standpoint, but that guy knows how to defend. And then Andrew Wiggins, say what you want about him being a former number 1 overall pick and not really living up to the offensive side of things, really, but he's yet another athletic plus defender that they have on the wing that can certainly help out too. So, I think this was the best deal for the Bucks as well to kind of wrap this up. But with the Heat moving forward, they're definitely going to have to get lucky adding some more talent to this roster with not a lot of cap flexibility. Bruce, what's your thought on Miami moving forward with their new core?
There's going to be very few easy buckets in the paint against Giannis and Bam, So kind of like is the deal when, Wemby's playing. Opponents are going to need to make jumpers because they are not going to be getting easily to the rim. Losing a hero means losing an all-star level perimeter scorer. And with Powell, as you mentioned, and Simone Fontecchio restricted free agents, the guards on the roster, as you said, Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Pele Larson, and Nikola Jovic. But listen, Riles and Andy Ellisberg, they are shrewd operators. And if they can somehow convince Powell to stay at home on a team-friendly deal, that's going to help them avoid those punishing salary cap penalties that they would be facing if they did pay Powell market value.
Yeah, and I feel like they got to get aggressive here, Wilby. Sorry to cut you off, but I mean, you go all in for Giannis, you got to go all in on getting talent around him and Bam now. You can't just settle for being cheap. Oh, we're not going to go above the apron. Like you're all in. You've pushed all your chips in for right now. Giannis, Bam, let's go win a title. You got to get aggressive out there, don't you think?
Absolutely. When I said that, I'm not saying the book is not closed on Miami's offseason by a long shot. Obviously, they got to get some pieces. I don't know how you can do it with all the cap numbers and everything reworked. Their world would get a whole lot easier if they were able to somehow bring back Norman Powell. Now, whether that happens or not, because of the money situation, that remains to be seen. He's going to want to get paid there, and he certainly earned it with his season, last couple of seasons in LA and then here in Miami. The other thing I will say, Miami's favor, their front office, their coaching, they are outstanding when it comes to developing, finding diamonds in the rough, turning them into not just, players who can play, really good players. Davion Mitchell, we talked about, Tyler Hero. We didn't think Tyler Hero was going to be an all-star. Nobody saw that in the future. And then, his immediate impact. Remember, he was one of the big players in their finals run a few years ago, his rookie season. So, they really have done an outstanding job, and they'll have to do it again in order to put the team, as you mentioned, in the contender. They obviously want to go for it. You see the Eastern Conference, and it's in flux. I mean, there's, out of the last 8 years, there have been 4 teams from the East to win it, 4 teams from the West to win the title. So for all the West is dominant and all this, it's been an even split, but it seems like it's been more wide open in the East and more opportunities to get to the finals. And so Miami's looking at that as an opportunity. And now I have, as Bruce mentioned, 2 of the best bigs in the interior. They're clearly they could be the best defense. They could overtake Detroit and Oklahoma City, the best defensive team in the league, if that's their way to get ahead in this business. So they do have the best defense in the league. Riles has done that before with my Knicks there in the 90s with not a world of talent, but with tough defensive players. But now he obviously with Bam and Giannis, he has Hall of Fame talent to work with. So the story is not closed on Miami, but they really do have some more work to do this summer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up their development over the years because it has been quite impressive. You look at any position on a Heat roster, and they've done it. Gabe Vincent is a great example of a guard. You look at the wings, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, both guys that came out of the G League with the Miami Heat and made names for themselves. At the center position, laugh all you want, Hassan Whiteside was a draft bust with the Sacramento Kings before going to Miami and putting together a couple really solid seasons, near all-star type seasons. So they really have an eye for talent, and they will find some diamonds in the rough to kind of fit their rotation and culture there in Miami. Now, because I am a fan now, as I teased at the top, I do have a quick wish list for the Heat moving forward. I definitely need Chris Middleton to come off the bench with Bobby Portis. Like, can Chris Middleton please sign a veteran-friendly deal to come help his friend Giannis out? Another guy to keep a lookout for, and this is a guy that tried to join the Bucks and is close to Giannis, Bogdan Bogdanovic of the Los Angeles Clippers, a shooting guard. He is an unrestricted free agent. He didn't really he's not coming off a great season with LA. I could see him getting a team-friendly contract to show what he can prove with Miami next year. That could definitely help in the shooting department. And then let's also add Brook Lopez while we're at it. I mean, he did not have a great year in LA. He's going to be a free agent. Would he join back up with his buddy Giannis, come off the bench in Miami? Those are just a couple guys, blasts from the past that I think could definitely help this team and might be willing to take a pay cut to come live in South Beach for a year or two. Now, next up, Bruce, let's go ahead and talk about the Bucks moving forward, because when I look at the Milwaukee Bucks, I mean, this is a team that went 32-50 last season last season. And next year, I think they're going to win a minimum 35 games. I think they're actually going to become a better team given what they got back in this trade, having the clarity, less distractions than Giannis not being there. And I think the biggest factor is Taylor Jenkins at the helm. I mean, this is a guy that is going to put out an entertaining team on the floor each and every night. This roster makeup is perfectly cut out for a creative-minded coach like Taylor Jenkins, who excelled with similar rosters with the Memphis Grizzlies. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the Bucks. I think they're only going to get better than 32-50.
You know, after losing 50 games last season with Giannis missing 46 out of the team's 82, Milwaukee fans hope that was rock bottom. And as you said, they can increase their win total right away. Hero, Jaquez, and Ware should all have key roles. Miles Turner had an off year, but with Giannis gone, he becomes kind of their top big. Drafting Nate Ahmet at 6'10" has great potential, and Braden Burries gives Milwaukee a ton of depth at the guard position. So, listen, before we get too excited, Bucks fans of a certain age might be forgiven for having flashbacks to 1975 when the team traded Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to LA for 4 players: Elmore Smith, Junior Bridgman, Brian Winters, and Dave Myers. Now, we know LA went on to win 5 titles with Kareem, while the Bucks were kind of mired in the middle of the pack for several years before eventually getting their mojo back under Don Nelson. So hopefully Taylor Jenkins, the man you mentioned a moment ago, can do for the Bucks in the future what Nelly did for them all those years ago as far as blending some nice ingredients together and coming up with a nice-looking team.
Yeah, great points, Bruce. World B?
I think it's going to be about the same as they were last year in terms of their impact in the East, if not worse. It's just they're going to take a nosedive. There's you look at the roster, as Bruce mentioned, and I see it a little differently. I don't see it as you're hoping. It's one of these things. If Miles Turner returns to what we saw a couple of years ago, if Tyler Hero can become a 25-point game a night, the 2 guys that came in this deal, Jaime Jaquez and Khalil Ware are projected at the moment to come off the bench. So these are big key pieces coming from Miami to Milwaukee, and they're going to be bench players. Now, you need depth, obviously, but I look at their roster now. I don't see – I think the East is clearly proven to be a stronger conference than people give it credit for. And now we're going to have a healthy Indiana team to deal with next year, along with the Pistons, along with the Celtics, along with the Knicks and everybody else, along with the Hawks. There's not going to be a ton of wins coming Milwaukee's way, I don't think, this coming season. Following season, let's see how some of these picks develop and see how it works out. I just don't see a lot of wins in the immediate future for the Bucks.
I think the one thing they have going for them with Tyler Hero, the most talented player they got back in this trade, is the fact that it is a contract year. So typically in those years, you see guys produce. So I'd be shocked if he's not in the mid-20s points per game averaging, leading this group out on the floor, at least in the scoring department. But yeah.
But here's the thing, guys. I totally agree with you on that. Does that mean Tyler Hero sticks around in Milwaukee for the whole year? If you know you're not going, are you going to give a guy like this who's not? Let's be honest, he's not all NBA caliber player. He's just he's an all-star, but he's not an all NBA type player. But he's going to want the max deal from whichever team after this coming season. I agree. He's going to be in a contract year. He's going to show out. You would expect, but that I don't know that helps Milwaukee or that hurts Milwaukee in terms of their future with him.
I mean, it definitely helps because you can still flip them at the deadline for peak value, sell high as you can as even a short-term rental. If he's playing elite basketball, you're going to get a better return than you would if he has a mediocre year and they know they're not going to keep him then, you know.
That's right. I agree with that. I meant like his future in terms of his future with Milwaukee. I guess is whether having a great season is going to help his future in Milwaukee because it's just going to up his price tag, and the Bucks are going to have to make a decision to give him whether to give him the max deal or not, or let him walk or let him go in a deal. That's what I mean. Obviously, the Bucks will reap the benefits of having a great player doing well, and then maybe he can reap the benefits of a trade. But in terms of what he's going to do in his future with the Bucks, I think it's up in the air, we'll call it.
Yeah. And speaking of futures, Bruce, let's talk about Jaylen Brown here for a minute, because what do the Boston Celtics do with him now? Do you trade him or try to salvage this relationship?
I mean, this has got the potential to be a really negative situation with Brown, who is a prideful guy. He's always represented the Celtics with class. Now, Brad Stevens has said he and JB have had a number of private and candid conversations regarding his situation, which probably means, yeah, we might trade you for Giannis type of thing. Okay. Brown can be expected to perform, professionally and manage his emotions. But how can he not feel a certain way towards an organization after putting the team on his shoulders all season after many of his teammates departed after the 25 playoffs? And it was just 2 years ago that Brown was the finals MVP in Boston's 2024 championship year. So while Brown and Jayson Tatum have always maintained a positive relationship, even when some fans and media members tried to gin up some friction between them, one has to assume that Tatum gave his blessing to the Giannis deal. So what does that mean? That means JT and JB are likely going to have a real man-to-man sit-down and work through that if Brown remains on the team. However, I think there's at least a 50% chance they got a plan B and he's going to get traded somewhere. And I don't think he'll be with Boston at the start of next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting situation, and just crazy how fast this all kind of got out of control in Boston with Jaylen Brown. I mean, we're just 2 years away from you guys being the NBA champions, and not even a season away from Jaylen Brown excelling to an MVP candidate for this year. I mean, he was balling out in Boston this year, and now he's dangled out in trades. I think you've got to trade him. You showed Jaylen your cards on where he kind of stands within the franchise. I don't see this ending well in Boston. He seemed pretty excited about, at least reportedly, about having his own team if he were to be traded to Milwaukee. So I think he might have his eyes set on going ahead and being a franchise face somewhere else to really prove it to the Celtics and the rest of the league that he can do it on his own on a full-time basis without Jayson Tatum. So, maybe they try to salvage this relationship this summer. But I think by next trade deadline, I don't think we'll see Jaylen Brown in a Celtics uniform. That's just my hot take.
How about Luka Doncic for Jaylen straight up? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you want to do that.
I don't.
World B?
Sorry.
It's really up to Jaylen Brown whether he wants to remain in Boston. It's going to be on his shoulders. If he, we forget this is the second time his name's been, rumored about being involved in deal. Back in, 22? There were rumors about KD potentially coming to Boston in a deal, and Jaylen Brown was a key piece that Boston was rumored to be willing to part with back then. So this is really the second time he's had his name thrown around in these trade rumors, which, to Bruce's point, is probably, if you're Jaylen Brown, you're kind of sick of being disrespected like this, being the only key figure involved in all these big deals that Boston wants to move. If he can get over that somehow, or they can mend the relationship, me personally, why would you not want to have Jaylen Brown back if you can get him, his head? Because once again, we talked about the East. It's better than it, I think it gets credit for, but it's still really wide open. And if you're Boston, geez, let me bring it all back again with motivated guys after what happened last year against Philly. I had Tatum at full strength. I got Jaylen Brown, who hopefully would be ticked off for the right reasons, and Derek White and the cast of others. They're right back into being a contender, maybe the leading contender to come out of the East again. Why would I not want to bring that back if I have the opportunity to? Now, contracts, money, Boston is really – they made a lot of deals in this past offseason to get their salary cap situation righted. I don't know how it would be going forward in the future. Maybe they have to trade one of these guys just to relieve themselves of, staying away from the second apron and stuff like that. But, man, if you can do it, bring these guys back and go for it once again.
All right, and moving forward, let's go ahead and talk about a trade that actually did go down. And this one was earlier on Monday, well before the Giannis news broke. And this was a 3-team trade. And World B, Julius Randle is back in New York. He is now with the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets sent Nik Claxton, longtime Net Nik Claxton, packing to the Chicago Bulls. And the Wolves got the 33rd pick in this year's draft. So World B, with Julius Randle back in town, what did you think of this 3-team deal?
I honestly, how often do we get to say this? The Bulls are the winner of the. When's the last time we called the Bulls winners? But I thought they won this deal, getting Claxton without having to give up basically anything really of consequence. And so, quality guy in the middle after they sent Vucevic to Bruce's Boston team there, which turned out to be great for Chicago, but a disaster for Boston. He, protected the water cooler really well, but that was about it. So they need a big guy. Obviously what they did in the draft, they wanted to get big athletic guys, and Nik Claxton certainly fits that bill. And he's getting out of that spot in Brooklyn. Maybe he's rejuvenated. Maybe he's just being in a better situation, talent-wise, albeit slightly perhaps, in Chicago. But, there's a new regime going on in Chicago, so maybe this is a big thing. I don't know what the Nets are doing here. It's a head scratcher to me. I like their front office. I think Sean Marks is a solid GM. I assume there's a plan, but I'm really looking forward to Julius Randle and Michael Porter Jr. being on the court at the same time. That should be, well, we'll just call it interesting.
Yeah, they went from getting rid of Cam Thomas, who always needed the basketball, and just added Julius Randle next to Michael Porter now. So seems like they have the same problem. Not to mention they used the 6th pick to draft Mikel Brown, who's a shooter and scorer as well that needs the basketball. So interesting stuff there. Bruce, what was your take on this 3-team swap?
Well, Minnesota moving Randle was strictly a salary dump, and they used some of his money to sign Ayo Dosunmu to a very nice franchise-friendly 5-year deal for $112 million. I thought that was an excellent move by them. Claxton, as you mentioned, goes to Chicago, and the big story there is really Caleb Wilson. So wherever that team does next year, he's going to be at the forefront of it. And as for Randle going to the Nets, look, they had like 4 or 5 rookies on their team last year. Now they're going to have 2 more. So they have basically 2 veteran guys now, Randle and Michael Porter Jr. And good luck to all those kids trying to get the ball out of those 2's hands, because they are going to be taking probably 60% of the shots on a given night, those 2 guys for the Nets. And I don't really see them going anywhere this year with this crew.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave some kudos to the Minnesota Timberwolves because I think they were right up there as winners in this trade, along with the Bulls, just given the fact that it opened up salary cap space where they could sign Ayo Dosunmu. And then also, in addition to that, give nuclear Naz Reid, your guy, Bruce, an opportunity to be a starting power forward. I think he has definitely deserved that right. The last couple of years, he's been extremely solid coming off that bench. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do on a nightly basis with starter minutes in the league. So definitely looking forward to Minnesota next year. And I don't think they're done yet. I think Minnesota still might have one or two things up their sleeve. And this, getting rid of Randle and his contract gave him the opportunity to kind of have some flexibility this summer to get a little bit more creative should something else come about. So definitely looking forward to that. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when I come back, we're going to talk about the NBA draft. All right, coming up now, let's talk about the first round of the 2026 NBA draft that took place on Tuesday night. First off, let's get to our reactions on the top 3 picks and how those shook out because very interesting how it all went down, Bruce. I mean, we had AJ Dybantsa go number 1. Darryn Peterson, who didn't even work out for the Utah Jazz, gets selected number 2 by Danny Ainge, who certainly is never scared to take the top talent. And then, boy, did Memphis seem to really luck out getting Boozer. I mean, he just seems to be a great fit as a building block for that team moving forward. But curious to hear your thoughts on how the top 3 shook out.
Well, the pride of Brockton, Massachusetts, 19-year-old AJ Dybantsa, heading to Washington to play us alongside Trae Young, Anthony Davis, Keyshawn George, and Alex Sarr. I mean, this looks like a really nice fit and could be the start of a revival in D.C. Davis and Young are the veteran leaders. Obviously, their health is a big key for that team. But I expected the Wiz to do better last season than they did. But this team looks like it could more than double last season's win total of 17. So maybe, challenge for the play-in, maybe even make the field of 16. Darryn Peterson joins a Jazz team that has now finished their tanking mode. They want to win games now, all right? Mm-hmm. And they got some talent on this team. I mean, he joins Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Walker Kessler, talented young core. No one's going to forget about Stockton and Malone. But listen, Danny Ainge knows how to build a team, and this one should be on the rise. And Boozer just looks like a perfect fit in Memphis. He's an NBA-ready physical presence. He's got a well-rounded offensive game. He can rebounder. And he's going to be in a front court rotation with guys like Zach Edey, Santi Aldama, Gigi Jackson, your guy, and Olivier Maxence Prosper. This could be the Grindhouse 2.0 about to, take place in Memphis. So they also picked up the 6'8" Karim Lopez from Hermosillo, Mexico. The rugged forward's a two-way big wing. So now they just got to offload John Morant, and then they're ready to kind of, make that Grindhouse 2.0 happen.
That's right. World B?
Well, it wasn't a big surprise as it turned out. There really wasn't a whole lot of drama about where these picks would go. There was talk about would Peterson go number 1 or whatever, but that really was put to bed with Dybantsa, going number 1, being the top pick. I agree with Bruce. I think the Wizards are on the cusp of doing really a nice turnaround to their franchise and being a competitive team for the first time in years with the lineup they have. They went and signed Trae Young to a new deal, their new 4-year deal, so they're clearly committed to him. Please, Anthony Davis, can we get 65 games out of you? That's it. Not asking for a full season. I just want to see him on the court because he's such a talent, even in his advancing years. Who's probably older because his body's older than his age is because of all the injuries. But when being on the court with those guys and Dybantsa and I'm glad you mentioned Alex Sarr because it's slow developing, but you see it developing with him in terms of being a good player, a quality, solid player. So I'm looking forward to seeing I never thought I'd hear this sentence in the last decade. Looking forward to seeing the Wizards perform next season, seeing how this group does. They made a lot of moves during the season last year to try and get themselves in a rebuilding mode, beyond just the youth movement. They want to, as Bruce mentioned with the Jazz, they're done with this tanking. They want to start getting some wins now. And I agree, bro. I think everybody healthy, they have a chance to get up there and be competitive for a play-in tournament field.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So big win for the Wizards. And let's go ahead and talk about some more big winners in the first round, Bruce. What's a team that really stood out to you in round one?
I loved OKC drafting 7'3" Aday Mara from Michigan. Given how Chet Holmgren fared poorly against Victor Wembanyama in the playoffs, Mara gives Mark Daigneault some serious height and a guy with solid defensive skills as far as shot blocking and rim protection. He's not going to be a Wemby stopper out of the box, but in a year or two, he may be able to provide some deterrence against Wembanyama, probably more than we've been seeing from Chet. I also like OKC picking up Bennett Sturtz in a draft night trade. He is a bucket. He plays both ends of the court. And here's a fun Michael Worldby level stat. He's the 11th player in college history with 2,000 points, 550 or more assists, 450 or more rebounds, and at least 225 steals. The rich get richer. And I want to give a quick shout out to SAC, believe it or not, the Sacramento Kings. I like Darius Acuff Jr., and I really like that they picked Alex Karaban, getting him through that trade with Cleveland. From the first time I saw Karaban as a freshman at UConn, I got a Peja Stojakovic vibe. He was one of the greatest shooters in Kings history, and Karaban can stroke it too. See the next Peja? That's a high bar to clear, no doubt about it. But he is a winning player with a solid feel for the game, and Sacramento needs guys like that.
Yeah, shout out to assistant general manager in front of the show, BJ Armstrong, part of the Sacramento Kings. I thought that was a great pick too, just winning culture, setting the standard, and Darius Acuff was obviously the top talent and biggest need for the Sacramento Kings. So big time moves by them.
Can I just say one more winner in the draft?
Yes.
The Boozer family, okay? Yeah. They presented themselves as a family of great people and excellent athletes. I mean, Carlos is 100 years old. He looks like he could still go out there and play. Cam is going to be a lock, and their entire family just oozes class and dignity. I was just so impressed with watching them, listening to them, seeing how they handled all the hoopla. Mad props to the Boozers.
Great point there. World B, who's one of your big winners of the first round?
Well, not to sound like a big homer once again, as if the Knicks winning the title wasn't, enough of a homer move. By the way, spoiler, I'm going to mention the Knicks winning the title in every one of our episodes throughout the summer. So boy. I thought the Hornets, did great with their picks. You think that last year they went out and got the best shooter in the draft in Con Knippel, and that worked out gangbusters. And now this year, the best shooter in the draft, Kristen Anderson, goes to Charlotte. I think it's just we thought there were three happy last season, and now you got LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Knippel, and now you add Christian Anderson to the mix. Who knows if Kobe White comes back or not, and what the future is there. But man, they got a lot of young pieces. They're only getting younger. They're only getting better. And then he went out and got St. John's Azubi kid. Who's only the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, only the Big East Player of the Year. Last year, they went out and got the Defensive Player of the Year out of Big East in Kalkbrenner, and he had a great first season in the middle for Charlotte, starting some games, coming off the bench, providing depth. So the Hornets just keep really adding quality pieces to what they hope is a real strong building block to get out of the play-in field and get into the actual tournament. And the other team I liked, I thought the Atlanta Hawks getting Kingston Flemings as their point guard of the future from Houston. I think getting rid of Trae Young, they re-signed CJ McCollum, which was a good move, and Kingston Flemings is more of a point guard type of guy, but he's a solid defender. And so I think he'll be a good quality piece this season as a reserve role, and he's going to be, down the road, he's going to be their starting point guard of the future, continuing with the Hawks rise to try and compete for a spot, contend in the East.
Yeah, I think there's some great picks by the both of you. I'm actually going to circle back on the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm not going to talk about Cam Boozer. We already talked about what a heck of a pickup he was for them as a building block for a rebuild team that just months ago dealt Jaren Jackson Jr. to Utah. But then after getting and securing Boozer at 3, they moved back twice in the draft to add 5 additional second-round picks before snagging Karim Lopez that Bruce mentioned earlier in tonight's show. He was the 21st overall pick, who's another hard-playing, smart player that defends and probably most importantly can pass the ball, which sounds very similar to the skill set of Boozer. So adding 2 guys, both big, as Bruce said as well, a big wing and a big front court player that are smart, play hard, and can pass, really sets a future team identity and lays a foundation for Memphis moving forward, which is absolutely key for a team in rebuilding mode. And that was one of the most productive first-round drafts I've seen from one team in quite some time. To add a potentially, arguably the best player in the draft in Cam Boozer, which he has the potential to be, and then 5 second-round picks and a Karim Lopez. That was one heck of a night on Tuesday for the Memphis Grizzlies. Bruce, let's go quickly get to our biggest losers of the first round.
You know, I hate to pin the loser label on teams at this point. Everyone feels good right after the draft, and I'd like to focus on the positive, but there were 7 teams that I would call draft losers because they simply had no first-round picks on Tuesday. The Houston Rockets, Indiana Pacers, Miami Heat, New Orleans Pelicans, Orlando Magic, Phoenix Suns, and Portland Trail Blazers. They were all losers because they didn't add a single player in the draft in the first round. So that's kind of a waffle, but like I said, I'm trying to accentuate the positive here.
I hear you there. World B?
Well, a couple of things. I'm not picking on them again as we did. And the Nets, I agree with you guys, passing up Acuff and taking Mikel Brown. We'll wait and see. I don't like these people that come on these shows and say, "Oh, this team's a loser," because as if they watched these guys play their whole careers in college. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. It seemed like a strange pick when I saw it. I thought that would have been a good pick, Acuff for Brooklyn. So we'll wait and see. But I'll tell you who I feel bad for. They're not losers necessarily, but 3 prospects: Isaiah Evans, Henry Vassar, and Malik Thomas. We're all viewed to be going – all had college eligibility, left to go in the draft. They were all projected to be first-round picks, and none of them got picked in the first round and probably not going to make more than, I guess, $1.5 million or less than $1.5 million next season playing, second round if they get their guarantee, which obviously is not chump change by any stretch. But those guys probably could have gotten more if they had stayed in school with their respective teams. And instead they're going to, just a disappointment they must have gone through on Tuesday, expecting to be picked in the first round and expecting to be one of those guys come up on stage and then nothing happens. I feel bad for them. They're not losers, but in the non-winners category, I guess those 3 are 3 players I just happened to see. I've really felt bad for them.
No doubt about it. And Bruce, one final thought to take us home?
Well, when I was at ESPN, I was right in the middle of draft night from 2003 when LeBron was drafted through the 2017 draft. I was the commissioner whisperer, okay? I was in charge of their every move during the draft. 11 years with David Stern, 4 years with Adam Silver. And we could do a whole podcast with just stories from draft night over the years if we ever had the time. But it was my favorite night of the year because watching the drafted players and their families live out their ultimate fantasies in real time was an incredible thrill for me. After more than a decade of drafts with David Stern, we became good friends, and I was in touch with him regularly in his final years. Adam, much different than David, but a treat to work with. He's always treated me great. But it's the families I remember the most and how they basked in the glow of their sons and brothers. Truly a magical night every single time.
Awesome stuff there, Bruce. And with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everybody.